If y'all remember, I've been talking about Ethan Couch, aka Affluenza Boy, for quite some time on my channel in the past. It seems like every time there was an update that came out about him, I made sure to talk about it because he is a huge case study of pure unadulterated white privilege in America. Well, now I'm bringing a story to you as Ethan Couch, but just some slight differences, but not any major differences. So in this picture, you see someone by the name of Blake Kirpatrick. And back in 2018, he was basically racing his car. And in the result of that, two boys ended up dying. And all he received was 10 years probation and some jail time. Let's get into it. A driver who was racing along a busy Cedar Park road in 2018 before crashing has received his sentence. 10 years of probation along with a short sentence in a county jail. Two young boys were killed in that crash. Now they said on a busy road, which means there were other cars on that road and other people around that area that were not involved with the racing. I'm like this: if you're going to do drag racing, you need to do it in an area where there is nobody who is involved with the drag racing going on. Don't do it in a spot where there are just regular drivers and people who are walking there throughout that area, because the speed on those cars is ridiculous. And once you start, you can't stop until you get to your end point. And anybody caught in those areas who is not involved, once they get hit, that is it. It says Blake Kirpatrick was sentenced on Tuesday, June 30th after pleading guilty to a second-degree felony charge of racing on a highway causing death. Kirpatrick will serve 60 days in jail up front. Then on each anniversary of the boy's death during the 10-year sentence, he has been sentenced to serve 3 days in jail. According to court documents, Kirkpatrick must also pay a total of $4,389 in fines and fees. Do you see how much of a slap on the wrist that is? So let me break that down. So he's only going to spend 2 months in jail up front, which means he's about to serve his sentence immediately. Then they said on each anniversary of the boy's death for the next 10 years, he has to serve 3 days. So this happened in March of 2018. It doesn't specify the day. Just know that when March rolls around, he just has to spend 3 days. So that could be a weekend. And he only has to do that once a year from now until 2030. If that is probably one of the most, and I'm not saying it to make it lighthearted, but that's one of the most beautiful jail sentences I have ever heard of in my life. The ultimate extreme slap on the wrist. And if y'all hear someone in the background, that's because my fan is on. That's why I'm speaking a little bit too direct into the mic so it can kind of drown out any noise that might be in the background. It says the other driver in the crash, Hayden Michael Hammer, was convicted in 2019 and sentenced to 7 years in prison with 10 years of probation to be served concurrently. Now look at that. This guy only got 2 months. 2 months in jail up front with 10 years probation. But the other guy who got convicted last year got 7 years. They should be serving the same amount of time. What was so unique about his sentencing that was not with the other person? Kirkpatrick and Hammer were racing each other on January 10, 2018 before crashing at West Whitestone Boulevard, Walton Way. 2 children, 1-year-old Daniel and 8-year-old Elijah Cartery, died on the scene. Daniel's mother and Elijah's stepmother, Zara Cartery, was injured in the crash. 1 month after the crash, the father of the children filed a lawsuit against Hammer and Kirkpatrick. Tansy Silva, Elijah's mother, called on the Cedar Park City Council on April 2018 to bring forward changes at the intersection where the crash happened. Let's see here. It says each case that comes into our office, and this is a word from the district attorney, Each case that comes into our office has unique effects and circumstances. The cases involving Hayden Hammer and Blake Kirpatrick involved a number of complicated matters. Our office took the case involving Hayden Hammer, the driver of the vehicle that struck and killed the 2 young boys, to trial last year. Okay, so now I see why he got more time, because his cars was the ones that actually did kill the 2 boys. The reason why he got the lighter sentence is because why he did not hit the 2 boys, he was involved with racing that involved the deaths of the 2 boys and the injuries of the mother and the stepmother. It says, our office took the case involving Hayden Hammer, the driver of the vehicle that struck and killed the 2 young boys, to trial. After a lengthy trial, a Williamson County jury sentenced Mr. Hammer to 7 years imprisonment, along with 10 years probation. Based on the insights that we have learned from the trial, as well as the specific facts of Mr. Kirkpatrick's involvement, level of responsibility, and acceptance of guilt, we agreed to resolve Mr. Kirkpatrick's case without an additional trial. His probation was carefully crafted to serve as a reminder that he played a role in the death of 2 innocent lives for the full 10-year probationary period. In addition to being a convicted felon, Mr. Kirkpatrick will be expected to follow numerous probation conditions, which include a total of 90 days in the Williamson County Jail, including 3 days a year on the anniversary of the death of the children, yearly driver's education programs, a restriction on operating any modified vehicle, prohibition on receiving any traffic ticket, and a written letter of apology to the families of the children. Still, in my eyes, a slap on the wrist, in my honest opinion. Because if it was us, guilt by association, we would get the same amount as the other driver, whether we hit the kids or not. But like I said, he got the sweetest deal. He only got to do 2 months in jail and 10 years probation, and just spend 3 years on the anniversary of their deaths every year for the next 10 years. Pay a fine, and do whatever else that is lined out in here, which should not be hard for him to do. But like I said, this reminds me so much of the Ethan Couch situation. But I think this one's a little bit lighter, because Ethan Couch practically got away with manslaughter, vehicular manslaughter, while being under the influence and stealing a vehicle. And all they said was it was affluenza. That was the first time we ever heard what affluenza was. And they was like, what is that? That's basically someone who's too rich to know what they're doing. I said, yep, only a white person can get away with that. Only a white person could get away with that.